It was not a conversation that happened from time to time. For Padre Pío, his guardian Anjo was a constant presence, as real as any person who was at his side. Since he was little, he had perceived something different. While other children share or jump with imaginary friends, he maintains serious dialogues with an invisible presence that, later, would understand to be his own. The most impressive thing is that it never stopped with childhood. On the contrary, it intensified as the tempo. Padre Pio remembered every day, hearing his longing for him with gentleness, like a faithful friend who never fails. He tells that he either accompanied from the first moment until the last breath of the day. It was like there was a spiritual weapon, something that didn't just guide, but also interacted in an elemental way. During the war, when pilgrims from various parts of the world confessed to him, Padre Pio did not speak other languages. Likewise, I understood everything, not because I studied, but because I wanted to translate for him in real time. Many say it is impossible, but the facts are contrary to logic. Those who come from Germany, France, or the United States were excited, saying that they understand how they speak their native language. Instead of explaining with pride, he barely smiled and said, "My friend helps me." It was always like that. When I didn't know what to say, I kept faltering for him. When he couldn't be in two places at the same time, he asked me to go to another place. "Eo mais incrível," as people felt something. I didn't see, but I felt. A peace outside the community took the environment where the Anjo had passed. We have had a period in which Padre Pio was doting, isolated, weakened. There is no room in the room. Likewise, after that, it didn't feel so good for even a second. He said that he was there all the time, sitting next to the bed, like a silent nurse. It was the burning that consoled the women, that it taught 2 hours of prayer, that helped them get up, even without the visible touch of a hand. Isso was not allegory. Ele falava com convicção tão direta que até os mais céticos ficavam em silêncio. Aquilo was real to him, more real than anything that could be seen. Anjo was a friend who never abandoned him, even in the most difficult moments. And for Padre Pio, this was a major proof that your Anjos are not just a beautiful doutrina, but companions designated by God, present, active, and, above all, accessible to all who believe. Many people who lived with Padre Pio relate curious episodes. Sometimes, when we enter the sacristy or convent, we feel a different atmosphere, a quiet silence of presence, as if you were there, observing with tenderness, but without being seen. When the Father asked about it, he just confirmed it naturally. "He is my guardian." It was not unusual to alert people about things that had not yet happened, as they had received information. At many moments in time, he said that he wanted to or had warned. It was not about exaggerated mysticism or theatricality. It was something so natural when it came to breathing. For Padre Pio, conversing with others was not an extraordinary event. It was routine. Just as people send a message to a friend, they barely turn their hearts to someone else. More importantly, Padre Pio never wants to keep anything to himself. He always said that each person has his own life, and that these people are just waiting for a signal to move forward. It encourages everyone to talk with each other, even though they don't seem strange. "Falem with him as falarium with a friend," he said, "and many that will follow your advice relating to changes. Situations in which we will feel peace, not amidst chaos, decisions we will make with sudden clarity, dangers avoided for seconds. All this, second element, is a sign that something was coming." Padre Pio died with the reputation of a saint, but as a matter of fact, he was just a man who never realized that he was not sozinho, a man who lives each day with the certainty that God has placed a faithful guard at his side, and that we all have one too. On a simple, more striking occasion, Padre Pío saw himself in a very common situation. He was ready to board a bus, but he did not have any money to pay for the passage. It was a necessary trip, but it really has nothing to do with traveling with Aquilo. Who would have thought that he was unprepared, or perhaps waiting for help from someone? But Padre Pío did not show concern. He was calm, as if he knew that something out of the ordinary would happen, and it happened. When the collector called him to collect from the passage, someone had already made payment for him. More or curious is that none of the surroundings seemed like anything else. Don't talk, don't change smells, just confirmation that the value was removed. Later, as he told what happened, Padre Pío revealed that he had asked for help from his guardian. He made no promises, he did not despair. He barely prayed in silence, as he knows what he is dealing with. For him, this was not a sign of supernatural power, but of care. He always said that the eyes are not only for spiritual matters, but also for simple day-to-day needs. This episode became a friendship between those who actually accompanied them, not for the grandeur of the miracle itself, but for the intimacy it demonstrated. It was like he really wanted to spend time on his side, at all times, ready to do little things. For Padre Pío, this was more than a confirmation that the material is important as the details. This story was framed because it showed that two-sided intervention does not depend on extraordinary circumstances. Sometimes it is not every day that they manifest themselves the most. While many expect great things, Padre Pío taught that God is also not simple, not practical, not necessary. The fact that someone pays a passage may seem small, but the message is enormous. God does not abandon his children nor the minimum things, and more importantly, he gives us a faithful, invisible, more real companion. And it was exactly that kind of experience that made Padre Pío's life so inspiring, a living, concrete faith that does not separate the spiritual from the human, but through all of it an opportunity to trust. There was a period in which Padre Pío was very weakened. He had a high fever, intense pain, and almost no strength to get up. The most difficult thing was that, at night, there was absolutely nothing to help him. The brothers were busy, and he remained alone in his room, struggling to move. Quem já passou por uma situação de doença solitária knows how much is so distressing. But at that moment, something different happened. Padre Pío does not feel any sense of solidarity. Later, he said that his guard's friend was at his bedside throughout the night, like a real nurse. He said that the child was not only comfortable, but rather helped to bear the child in a serene manner. The curious thing is that he decrevia everything with simplicity, without exaggerations or with mystery. He said that either Anjo or Cobria, that he felt a presence there like a physical body, but without seeing the body. It was like someone estivesse watching over him with care and delicacy. He did not have hallucinations, he did not dream, he was lucid. And what more than Marcou was a feeling of peace. Even with the high fever, the atmosphere was light, calm, as if the night had been softened by the silent presence of the Anjo. Isso não ocorreu de imediato, mas deu forças para suportar. I was careful not in detail, with invisible attention, but real. For him, it was proof that his eyes only have messages, his companions are present, especially when no one else can help. This episode saw a recurring testimonial that he shared with those who were looking for consolation. Many people think that only when we ask for beautiful words or long prayers does our soul help us. But Padre Pío taught that the heart is listening to the heart. He didn't scream, he didn't make a scandal. I barely trusted. This trust was enough for his guard's brother to enter into action. This marked his life so much that, from then on, he began to encourage everyone to ask for help from their loved ones in difficult times, including health problems. The message that he left was clear. Even when nothing else can reach you, or anything else can. And he goes. One of the most impressive things about the relationship between Padre Pio and his guard was naturally as he sent to other people. Sim ele fazia isso. When someone stops asking for prayer for a doting parent, for someone in perigo or going through affliction, Padre Pio customarily says, "Já mandei meu anjo até lá." And he failed to do so with so much conviction that he seemed to be simply giving an order to someone he trusted. For him, it was like bringing spiritual help that knew no distance. You do not need to know or understand exactly or wait for confirmation. He barely trusted that anyone would obey, and he always obeyed. Some stories involve people who, not even at the moment when he says this, feel relief, force, or are surrounded by serious situations, but also without knowing that we are being scarred by him. A woman, for example, said that, during a complicated birth, she felt a sudden and inexplicable peace that accompanied the end of the procedure. Only after discovering that, at that same time, someone had asked Padre Pio for intercession on her behalf, and he responded that he would send it as desired. That kind of thing happened frequently. These were not isolated coincidences, as people relate real changes, precise interventions, and everything he attributed not to himself, but to fidelity, to two anjos that obey God. Padre Pio always reinforced that any person could do the same, ask his friend to find something, to be comforted, to protect himself, to illuminate a decision. He said that your eyes have messages, but they also have shields. And, throughout his life, he encouraged countless people to create that daily bond with his guardian angel, not only for himself, but also for others. For him, the most powerful prayer was faith with simple faith. And if a request was made with faith that could move the heart of God, then it could also move its desire to move with love. That deep trust came from his spiritual legacy, something he didn't just live, but ensinou a Teofim. Pier Giorgio Privato was a spiritual disciple of Padre Pio, someone who lived closely with him and taught his teachings about his guardianship. In a common night, Pier Giorgio was leading back home an intense day of activities. I was exhausted. I can't imagine how much exhaustion that could be. As I drove down a poorly lit road, I ended up falling asleep for a few seconds. But instead of losing or checking your car or leaving the track, it was agreed to check in safety exactly not your destination. When it was told, I felt that something unusual had happened. There was nothing like the address that was all wrong. I didn't remember. To tell the story, Pier Giorgio shared that, in those seconds of unconsciousness, he was clearly impressed that someone was directing him. I didn't see anything, but I felt a firmness in the steering wheel, a safe driving, as if other people had assumed or controlled it. Later, when I related the story to Padre Pio, I heard it as a matter of course. Foi o meu anjo que o conduziu. It was not seen as a miracle, but as something absolutely possible. Padre Pio trusted so much in the atuação dos anjos that this type of intervention for him was a natural extension of faith. Pier Giorgio has not formally asked for help at this time, but rather a spiritual friendship that nourishes the Father, or shelter with protection by the way he sent it. These testimonies are shared between you and many people, mainly those who face daily problems, such as motorcyclists, health professionals, and family members. Pier Giorgio's story showed that our eyes do not only age when we pray with words, but we also respond to silent prayers and attach the spiritual connections that we have with other people. To hear this story, it is clear to us the importance of walking in a state of grace, of keeping faith alive, and above all, trusting in the actions of two guardians, because you never know when he will be directing himself, literally. During a mass celebrated by Padre Pio, something completely unexpected happened. The church was full. The number of followers approaching the community was much higher than expected. When the barnacle was over, the consecrated hosts had finished. It was a delicate situation because interrupting the distribution would be disturbing and could lead to a spiritual misunderstanding. But in an instant, something unexplainable happened. At the sight of the chalice, there was a new host, as if it had arisen from nothing. Padre Pio continued distributing to the community normally, without altering the expression, but inside he knew that it had been a direct intervention of the cell. Later, when asked about this, Padre Pio revealed, with the simplicity that was characteristic of him, that his guardian had intervened. Secondly, care must be taken to ensure that no desecration or scandal occurs, and guarantee that everyone receives Jesus in a dignified manner. There are no lights, visions, or external manifestations, just a silent, discreet, more real miracle. It was exactly like this, the second testimony of Padre Pio, in a hidden, effective, and absolutely respectful way like the sacraments. He did not falava to impress, falava to ensinar. The message was clear: God cares for every detail of our faith, and the instruments are carefully cared for. This event deeply marked those who witnessed Mass that day. For many, it was a water divider in the Chebe, understanding about the Eucharist and about the presence of 2 years in the liturgy. From there, we began to present the Mass as something much more spiritual than symbolic, and for those who have lived for 2 years, this was a silent, more powerful sign that He is not only next to us in the difficulties, but also in our sacred moments. Padre Pio always reinforces, the altar is not empty. The anjos are there, adoring, protecting, and if necessary, waiting for him to touch the earth. Certain night, in the convent of San Giovanni Rotondo, where Padre Pio lived, the brothers were surprised by a soft melody that seemed to come from all sides, but from place to place they were not heard at the same time. It was music that none of them managed to understand precisely, but everyone knew that they had never heard anything like it. There were no instruments, no singers, but the notes seemed to flow without being harmonious, delicate, and strangely comforting. Some looked at 2 rooms to try, to understand where it came from, but there was no visible source, barely certain that we were hearing something supernatural. Next time, still intrigued, some religious people commented that they had lived with Padre Pio. His response was simple and direct. We formed the anjos, accompanying the souls that were going from purgatory to paradise. He fell naturally, as he was already accustomed to that type of manifestation. For him, we celebrated when a soul was freed, and, at the same time, when it left here on earth. What is more impressive is that this explanation was not given as a theory or metaphor. Padre Pio knew exactly what had happened and had total conviction of what he said. After this episode, many 2 brothers will pray with more fervor for the souls of purgatory and pay more attention to the small spiritual manifestations day by day. That night left deep marks. It is not about music itself, but about the awareness that there is an invisible reality, very close, that sometimes manifests itself when it is least expected. To live together with Padre Pio, these moments were not common, but they were also not impossible. And every time something like this happened, he used experience to show that the eyes are not only symbols, but real presences, that we live in the morning, even during the early hours of the morning. Saint Margaret Mary of Alacoque was a deeply mystical soul, but she did not alhaya the difficulties of life. During one of his most intense prayers, he felt something completely foreign to the common people, a living and palpable presence on his side. It was not a thought, not a vague impression. She is certain that her guardian's friend was there, remembering someone sitting next to her. I did not live like the eyes, but the heart and the body regiram, with so much peace and security that it was impossible to dream. His story is not exaggerated or theatrical, only a sincere description of a concrete spiritual experience. O que más, Margarita? Margarita was not an external miracle, but in the form of the presence of Anjo, transformed into the prayer of the Naquel instant. An inexplicable consolation came from her spirit, as all her concerns had been removed from within her. The surrounding atmosphere seemed suspense, and she knew that it was not Sozinha. When I shared the experience with my confessor, I confirmed that many saints will relate something similar. Moments of prayer where the presence of the soul becomes almost physical, embora invisível. This was not a hallucination nor a fantasy. It was something approaching, like a father sitting next to a child who is crying. This type of experience, embora rare, serves as a motto that faith is not just about belief, but also about relationships. Saint Margaret said that after that day, you will never pray again feeling sozinha. Even in the darkest moments, she carried that fire, because her friend was next to her, even in silence. And so that you can read this testimonial sheet, find out or invite your confidence, because the presence of 2 years may not always be perceived, but it is constant, and sometimes, when we need it most, it is felt. Many people who have had some spiritual experience relate it to them, that it is clear that their guardianship is perto, even when they do not see you. One of the most frequent signs is the sudden feeling of peace, that deep calm that invades the heart in the most difficult moments. It can happen during a prayer when everything seems lost, or in an unexpected situation of affliction. This peace is not just any sensation. It is a very strong relief that seems physical, as if it were a more invisible way to protect people, saying that everything is going to be better. Another sign that appears only in the strange lights, small orbs that some people see picking at the edge of the air or in the environment where they are. There are luminous manifestations without immediate scientific explanation, which appear suddenly and somehow in the same way. To prove it, these lights show the presence of the child, a kind of heavenly ping to draw attention. Many tell us that it's not dark, and it's a kind of comfort and security when those lights appear, like a silent hug when you see the light. Finally, the most common stories involve invisible company in moments of solidarity or difficulty. People who face serious problems feel that they are not alone, that someone is walking next to them, just as they cannot see that presence. Sometimes this appears in dreams, with messages, warnings, or consolations that appear in memory. As you like, you use different ways to show that you are taking care of us, attentive to every step. These signs can go unnoticed for many, but for those who recognize us, there is a source of hope and confirmation that we never walk alone. Let's look at the end of this deep and true story about the 2 years that guard the life of those who walk in faith. There are real stories, experiences that show that the presence of these celestial beings is not just a distant conceit or a sketchy detail of spirituality. He is here, next to us, caring, protecting, intervening, even when we cannot see or understand. The testimony of Padre Pío and so many others reveals something essential. Our anjos are not abstract figures, but companions are faithful to God to help us in our daily battles, in our difficulties, and in our sacred moments of life. When faith encounters this reality, it becomes more alive, more concrete, more capable of transforming hearts. Now I'm talking to myself. Did you feel, just like for a moment, that it wasn't sozinho, that an invisible force was at your side, guiding your steps, calming your anguish, or illuminating your path? These experiences are not exclusive to saints or extraordinary people. Some perceives for each one of us, because God does not abandon us, and his anjos are always ready to move. We will allow ourselves to enter our lives. What is your relationship with your guardian? Do you believe that he is at your side, even during the most difficult hours? I very much want to know what you think, and most importantly, what spiritual experience you have involving the protective presence of 2 years. Please leave your comment on the logo here. Share your story, your doubts, or even your moments of peace and consolation. Your voice is important, and your experience can be a light for other people you are assisting, and we need to know that you are not alone. If you have viewed this video, do not stop clicking on the channel and activating the notifications. This is essential so that you do not need new content, all the teachings that we can transform your faith and your spiritual life. We are here to walk together, learning more about divine care and the wonders that God works in our favor. Your registration strengthens that community and helps to support those messages that touch the heart and renew hope. Don't miss the next inspiring stories that are already prepared. Lots of real testimonies and practical advice for you to grow in faith and trust without worrying about 2 years. And so that you want to go even deeper, I recommend that you check out the videos that are appearing here next to you. Neles, you will find impressive stories and experiences that can open your eyes to the constant presence of 2 years in your life. Don't stop attending, sharing, and inviting other people for that day of spiritual discovery and strengthening. Very humbled to be here at the end, to dedicate your time to hear these testimonies that change lives. May God and His angels guard us as we always walk with you, illuminating your days and bringing peace to your heart. Here's the next video with more stories that reveal the love and protection that only it can offer. Fique na paz e até breve.